Hey everyone, what's going on? Xlex here with another Master Duel video for you all. So today we're going to be taking another look at Mathmech, and we're actually going to be doing a bit more testing for the upcoming Master Circuit series that I very much plan on participating in, and I'm very much looking forward to. I did discuss in our video on Sword Soul a couple of days ago that was the deck I was thinking of taking. I'm still leaning a little bit towards Sword Soul, just because I not only like the deck's power in this format, but I'm also very familiar with it. But in order to learn Mathmech both a bit better playing with and against it, I've actually been doing some testing with Mathmech too, and this testing is actually slightly made me reconsider that I might actually want to take Mathmech. It's probably going to be Mathmech or Sword Soul. It's going to be one of the two, I imagine, but I don't know. I decided against Mathmech initially because I was like, oh, it's strong, yes, but I'm not as familiar. Maybe if I get some more testing in, but the more testing I've actually been getting in, which again was actually more to like get the feel of how Mathmech plays, so I could like tech and play better against it as Sword Soul. But I don't know. This deck just plays so well through Disruption. It's kind of ridiculous, honestly. And just also, like, the fact that this deck operates so well whether you go first or second. This is, I know I've made this, statement about decks before, but this is, like, truly, I think, one of the first Master Duel decks where I legitimately don't care what the coin toss is. Like, I don't know if anybody else gets that when they play Mathmech, but, like, a lot of other decks, and I'm hoping to see it land on heads, right? But, like, with Mathmech, I'm just, like, I just find myself barely paying attention to the coin toss. I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't matter if I go first or second, because as we all know, if we go first, we just set up a Superfactorial, and if you go second, you just OTK them. So, yeah, I don't know. I've actually, I think I'm going to do more testing with this deck, and right now, I'm kind of leaning towards using it. Again, I'm not 100% sure yet, but if I do end up using Mathmech, I'm really liking this list that we're seeing right here. This is the last one that I believe we featured in the last video as well, because we had just taken out Final Sigma. Between that video and this testing, I was doing some looking on Master Duel meta, particularly the deck breakdown for Mathmech decks. And one interesting thing that I've noticed is, like, it seems like barely any people are playing 2 Laplacian. I feel like it's like 87% of people are playing only one of this card. And I'm not really sure why, because I feel like being able to make this card on turn 1 and then follow up with another on turn 2, I don't know, I just feel like ripping a card out of your opponent's hand on turn 1 is so good. And the setup to do that is not very complex. You just need Circular and then one of Addition, Subtraction, or Diameter. If you open that combination of cards, which again is a lot of cards, then you can, Laplacian for a turn 1 hand rip, and then follow up with a Superfactorial for your second Laplacian on your opponent's turn. If you're wondering how to pull off that combo, feel free to check out my combo guide, which should also be linked in the description below there. So, yeah, we go over that play, and then a whole bunch of other pretty standard and basic Mathmech plays there. Yeah, I don't know, like I said, I'm just, like, super loving this deck. Particularly what I like about it over Sword Soul is, as I touched on earlier, just its sheer resilience to being disrupted. Sword Soul, it can pretty easily fall apart to a single Veiler or Imperm. That's, like, why we play Heavenly Dragon Circle, in addition to Call By and Crossout, is to hopefully avoid getting our Moye negated. This deck, like, kind of doesn't really care about Veiler and Imperm most of the time. If you do have Veiler and Imperm you're playing against this deck, I find that usually Alembertain is the best thing to hit. That said, like, you really just want to make sure that you're keeping, like, 3 Mathmechs out of their graveyard and or keeping them from having access to Superfactorial. But mostly if you can just keep, like, 3 Mathmech monsters, make sure they don't have 3 Mathmech monsters in their graveyard, then they can't Laplacian you on their turn, which means they're not going to be able to do the whole hand rip and clear your field and have a negate. If you can banish, like, one monster in particular out of their graveyard, if possible, try to hit Diameter, because this is the one that gives them the Omni negate. But of course, it really depends on what combo your opponent is doing, like, whether they've used their normal summon or not, if you think or know they have Parallel Exceed or not, because this is I've had people, one comment I guess in particular I can think of, like, ask what Parallel Exceed is for. Parallel Exceed is a fantastic extender in this deck. Basically, if you get disrupted at all and you're left with just one of your Mathmech monsters in play, especially if you haven't gotten Circular yet, you can just use your random Mathmech monster to go into Linguriboh, and then specialty Parallel Exceed from your hand to Linguriboh Zone. That gives you 2 level 4s, which you can either, link away or even overlay into Alembertain. So that's actually, yeah, that's one of the main uses of Parallel Exceed that I use it for most of the time, is If I open a random hand like Subtraction plus Parallel Exceed plus a bunch of random spells, you still have plays because, again, you normal Subtraction, go for Linguriboh, special Parallel Exceed, get 2 level 4s, overlay for Alembertain, search for Circular, and then, then you have Circular, then you're just off to the races. So a lot of the games we're going to take a look at today actually particularly feature us playing through a good bit of disruption, which again is, so far, I think the main appeal of this deck to me. I think at one point, if I remember correctly, we even managed to play through a Nibiru. Like, our opponent drops a Nibiru and we still get, like, a really solid end board on them. Which is funny because Nibiru, one, if you're not playing Nibiru in this format, you absolutely should be, because Mathmech and Sword Soul are, like, the top 2 decks, and they're everywhere, and they're both very susceptible to Nibiru. So I know a lot of people took Nibiru out in more recent formats because of branded Despia and Runic and Fluanderies not hitting the 5 summon mark. We're absolutely in a meta where people are going like over 5 summons all the time right now, so definitely get that rock in your deck if you haven't already. But honestly, you do still have to be mindful of when you play Nibiru, because like I said, I've had a game here, which we're going to see, where I get Nibiru'd pretty well into my combo, and we still end on a really solid end board when all is said and done. So yeah, I think at this point, enough of me blabbing. Let's go ahead and break this list down card by card, and then we'll take a look at those games. So we're playing 2 Effect Veiler, 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 Ghost Spell and Haunted Mansion, MVP. Oh my god, absolutely play this card in this deck. This card is nuts. Not only is it really good in this format, being able to stop Superfactorial, among a bunch of other things, but also stop you from getting Decode and Called By. Just, sorry, I wanted to mention that real quick. Like, Ghost Spell, if you're not playing it in this deck, absolutely play it. I'm actually honestly thinking of crafting a 3rd one just for this deck, but maybe not. Anyway, we're playing 2 Mathmech Sigma, 2 Mathmech Addition, 2 Mathmech Subtraction, 3 Mathmech Diameter, 3 Mathmech Circular, 3 Parallel Exceed, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 3 Cynet Mining, 1 Mathmech Equation, 3 Small World, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, 3 Infinite Impermanence, and then finally 1 Mathmech Superfactorial. Now for the extra deck, we're playing 2 Primathmech Laplacian, 2 Primathmech Alembertain, 1 Link Disciple, 1 Link Devotee, 1 Linguriboh, 1 Cyberse Wicckid, 1 Update Jammer, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Splash Mage, 1 Transcode Talker, 1 Decode Talker Heatsoul, 1 Apollusa Bow of the Goddess, and then finally 1 Accesscode Talker. So that's going to round out the list, the main and extra deck. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some gameplay. So the first game that we're going to take a look at today is going to be a mirror match. Lots and lots of mirror matches in Diamond right now. I don't know if this is anybody else's experience, but it's funny. I ever since Mathmech came out, like in Diamond rank, I don't see pretty much anything except Mathmech, branded Despia, Sword Soul. Like, I just don't see Runic anymore. I don't see Runic. I don't see Flows hardly. I don't know. It's interesting, but it's a lot of Mathmech. Lots of Mathmech mirrors right now. So our opening hand, it's, well, thank God we went second, right? Because, like, oh my god, could you imagine trying to go first in this hand? I guess it wouldn't be, like, too terribly different. Well, it would be in this matchup where they're trying to OTK us, but here, as I touched on in the profile, you notice I actually saved my Ash Blossom specifically until they actually had Alembertain. Now, they did already end up searching their Superfactorial off the Circular, but the reason I didn't Ash or try to negate the Circular effect is because I don't really care if they have Superfactorial if, like, these are going to be the only 2 Mathmechs in their graveyard, right? So this is going to kind of be the way that I play against this deck most of the time, is just trying to make it so that they don't have, like, ideally they don't have Diameter in grave. Ideally they have less than 3 Mathmechs in grave, because even at that point, if they search Superfactorial, that's fine. And they have so many ways of searching Superfactorial, right? Like, even if I'd hit the Circular, Alembertain could have potentially searched it, but more than likely they're just going to go for Diameter here, which is another card, as I mentioned, you want to keep them off of if possible, is Diameter. The opponent is going to have a Ghost Spell, or a Call By, but we have the Ghost Spell for the Call By. But it looks like I actually threw out the Impermanence instead, which was very smart because they have a Superfactorial in hand, so it's funny, that was my automatic response, was, oh, Call By, I have Ghost Spell, but sometimes it's not always right to, like, shotgun that kind of response just because you can. Thankfully, past me, unlike present me, was thinking about the fact that my opponent's got a Superfactorial, so, like, yeah, they can't set up anything scary with it, but they can still set up an Alembertain Surge, which I still think is pretty scary, so Now, unfortunately, I just drew Maxx and passed here. That is kind of the drawback occasionally. This does not happen often at all. But occasionally when you run a deck with a lot of disruption, like this one tends to, you will just open like all disruption for a good while. But fortunately, you know, we have 3 Circular, 3 Cynet Mining, and also 3 Small World, so, like, and the Maxx we just got off, but my point is, like, we have a lot of cards top deck in the live plays. Small World also would have been a live play, because I have Nibiru in hand. You can use Nibiru and Valor as bridges to Mathmech Circular, which is why I like playing both in this deck, aside, of course, from being just good disruption, and this deck being good to include a lot of disruption in, but... So I do have the Nibiru here, and I've got a couple of Ash Blossoms, so I'm honestly not particularly concerned, right? I figured my opponent's probably just going to go for the Update Jammer OTK, but that's totally fine. I'm going to wait, though. I'm going to wait until my opponent specifically drops Accesscode Talker in order to summon Nibiru. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Well, you don't really get a chance to use Nibiru, right? Because you can't respond to Accesscode, summon, or effects. That's true that you can't respond directly to them, but I've mentioned this before. If you hold this little button that's usually right here when you're actually playing a live game that says auto off and on, if you set this toggle to on as access code is being summoned, you can't, you know, activate an effect in response to the summon, but once the summon has resolved, you will have a chance for priority to pass to you upon the resolution of the summon, and that's when you can Nibiru them. So, but you have to have your toggle set to on in order to be able to do that, so just keep that in mind. But that's actually another tip I wanted to give, and a lot of the reason I wanted to show this game. Even in Diamond 1, where I've been, you know, exclusively testing lately, I see a lot of people drop Nibiru on me when I'm playing Mathmech, like, way before I actually summon access code. You should definitely wait for them to actually summon access code. Because if you don't, it's just, and you don't, you know, finish them off, it's really just going to come back and bite you in the ass later in the game. So, you know, again, I see a lot of people drop Nibiru as soon as I play Update Jammer. I don't agree with that. I think you should wait for the actual access code to get summoned, because not only have you dealt with, like, the OTK for this turn, but, like, you've ensured that they're not going to have, like, this huge beat stick that can wipe your board on a later turn, which might not OTK you, but can still very easily beat you, so. I learned my lesson when I Nibiru'd, you know, Mathmech once while they hadn't had access code yet, and then they just got it out the next turn, and then I lost, so it's like, oh, duh. And yeah, as you can see, as soon as I even reveal the Nibiru, my opponent just concedes, so, yeah, I wanted to show this game because, like, this looked like a bit of a dead hand, but thankfully we went second, but, you know, even then, we still didn't draw a live card on our turn. It's funny, we didn't actually, like, play a single card on the board this game. This was entirely disruption, but another reason I wanted to show this game is because I think this is a great example of showing just how important these staples are to include in your decks. You know, I've seen some people kind of bemoan the fact that, like, they feel like they can't compete with their deck, whether it's something along the lines of, like, Blackwing or Dark Magician or something like that. But if you look at, you know, the meta-analysis videos that we've been doing, we see decks like Dark Magician and Toons and stuff like that pretty regularly getting Diamond 1. Not a lot of those decks, mind you, but a couple of them, you know. And honestly, the reason they're able to have that success is because of staple cards like Maxx, like Ash Blossom, like Nibiru. So, you know, if you're on the fence about including those competitive cards in your more casual deck, again, I would submit this game as an example. Yes, we are playing a tier 1 deck, but again, we didn't actually use any of our deck's cards. We were able to purely win through disruption alone, just showing how important it is. So there's that duel. Let's go and take a look at the next one here. Okay, so we are playing as branded Despia this time, which I noticed this is, like, still playing Cosmic Cyclones. I don't know. I feel like I've talked about this a couple of times, but, like, I think Cosmic Cyclone's a pretty awful card to include in your best of 1 main deck. I think it's a side deck card, personally, but that's just my 2 cents. So I'm going to start off with a Cynet Mining here, pitching the Imperm. My opponent is going to have an Ash, but fortunately I've got the Crossout Designator. Decided to pitch Imperm because I figured, like, Maxx and Ash are just the 2 best disruption tools I could possibly have, so I'll just go ahead and keep them. And then obviously, you know, we have to keep the Crossout Designator just in case they have, well, Ash Blossom, so. Unfortunately for me, though, the opponent actually throws out a Joel and Lockbird. I've talked about this card a couple of times recently, too. Unlike Cosmic Cyclone, which I think is terrible tech against Runic. I really do. I think that card is god-awful in main deck, personally. Joel Knockbird is a fantastic card to play against Runics because it's not only really great against Runics and a lot more effective at shutting them down, honestly, than a single Cosmic Cyclone would be, but it can also hurt a lot, and I mean a lot of decks in this format, very much including mine, including Mathmech. The only deck that Joel Knockbird does not hit hard this format is Sword Soul Tindy, because Sword Soul Tindy doesn't need to do searching in order to, like, pull its combo off. Like, yeah, it does some searching, but not much of it at all. Whereas every single other deck, including this one, including Mathmech, is doing a lot of searching. So, Joel Knockbird, yes. Cosmic Cyclone, no. IMO. So, we're going to have to pass here, but we've got Maxx and Ash Blossom, and our opponent's only on 4 cards after using that Disruption, so... We have an Ash Blossom for their Branded Fusion, they have a Call By, c'est la vie, such is life, so I'll just throw out my Maxx in response here instead. I'm trying to think, given my opponent's resources, there's not... They'd have to have another extender in their hand for them to OTK me. I don't think they can have 8,000 damage in most situations off of just Branded Fusion by itself. Looks like they're sending Albaz and Despia Tragedy. If they were going for an OTK line, I would have expected to see Albaz and Nibiru here, because then that summons Albion and then a 4,000 attack Titaniclad, but, I mean, that's 6,500 damage right there. Yeah, if they had an Alembertain Addition of that, I would definitely be dead, but it doesn't look like they do, so that's pretty good for me. Actually, they do, they just searched it. Well, because they send Despia Tragedy, right, of course, so. Yeah, it looks like they realized they couldn't OTK here, so they're just going for a more standard Mirror Jade line. I'm only going to get a couple of draws, but like as you can see, that was all I needed. Circular plus Diameter. Well, I think I drew Ghost Spell plus Diameter, but regardless, I now have Circular plus Diameter in hand, which is far more than enough to make some plays. I even have the Ghost Spell for my opponent's Inevitable branded in red here, so that's very nice. And then as if I didn't, you know, already have enough extenders, I even got a Parallel Exceed on top of that, so like honestly with this much gas, getting to the update jam where Accesscode TK is going to be trivial here. The only thing that would really stop me is if my opponent's last card does happen to be Nibiru, which would also explain why they didn't Albion into Titaniclad, on top of course, them not having another 1,500 damage to go with it to finish me off. I'm actually pretty lucky that they didn't, to be totally honest, but... Yeah, so I usually go for Alembertain before I start going for the update jam or Accesscode OTK, in most situations, when possible. It's a nice bait, might cause your opponent to think you're playing into something else, and honestly, more often than not, if you don't have the Diameter in hand, you probably should search it to go for the OTK, because a lot of the times you can go for the OTK and then also still have an Alembertain up that will... be able to negate, like the one I just made here. You might be wondering, well, why did you make a second Alembertain? You can't even use this effect. I did it to make sure that I had a negate with Diameter. Just in case this last card did happen to be something that's going to mess me up. Just wanted to make sure that we're all good here. So. Plus here with the addition, bumping it up to 3,000 attack, I mean, I can still very easily summon it, but I technically don't need to make update jammer here. And then, yeah, as soon as I reveal Parallel Exceed, I mean, my opponent knows it's over, but it was already over anyway. I didn't even need the Parallel Exceed because I still had, obviously, the Splash Mage effect and then also the Mathmech Equation effect as well. But even if I didn't have, or even if I needed to use that Alembertain in order to OTK, I still could have done that. I could have either used it to make the Splash Mage or sacked it off to get another level 4 out. So, but again, I wanted to keep it up and then negate, of course, as well. So there is that duel right there. Let's go and take a look at the next one. Alright, next up here we have yet another duel against Branded Despia. Actually, another reason I'm kind of gravitating towards the Mathmech matchup as well is because, I don't know, this matchup, Mathmech versus Branded Despia, I don't know that it necessarily feels super one-sided, but I feel as a Mathmech player, like, by virtue of playing Mathmech, I already feel like I have an inherent advantage, to be totally honest, so... Honestly, I don't know how much Branded Despia I expect to see in tournaments, just because that deck has been falling off lately. Which is another thing that I've noticed, actually. Ever since Mathmech came out, in Diamond, I've seen, like, definitely much less Branded Despia. Been seeing even less Runic, though. We definitely have the numbers to back that one up, as far as decks that got submitted anyway, but... I feel like this season, I feel like really ever since Mathmech came out, there's been a huge disparity in terms of, like, what decks are seeing or what ranks, because I'll see people like complaining about having to face against Runic, Labyrinth, and like stuff like that all the time. And again, I never see Runic, I never see Labyrinth at all. Oh, this is the game where we got Nibiru, so yeah, opponent drops Nibiru on us right here, right as we have Link Disciple and Devotee and all that fun stuff. And they even did wait until we triggered the Devotee's effect. So I'm gonna have to pass here, and it looks like, oh, he just got wrecked by that Nibiru, but I didn't really. If you look at my graveyard is fully set up, including a Diameter, and I have the Superfactorial. Like, as long as I have that at the end of turn 1, that's like the main thing I'm looking for. Really, everything else is just like the cherry on top. Very much like Revolt with Tri Brigade, right? Like, obviously, it's great when we can set up Apollusa plus Revolt, but as long as you set the Revolt, that's, you know, got 4 things to summon, you're good. Same with Mathmech. As long as you've got the 3 Mathmech monsters, including a Diameter with the Superfactorial, we're good. So, I'm going to let this Foolish Burial resolve. I actually usually Ash Blossom Foolish Burials, but lately I've been letting them resolve. Just because they usually end up sending something that's going to trigger an Ash Blossom anyway. So, and sure enough, my opponent just sends a Despia Tragedy. That I am going to Ash, because they're pretty clearly looking for Alembertain here. This could be a bait. I mean, they could have an Alembertain or a Brain Diffusion in hand anyway. I mean, I know I would have played the Foolish there anyway, but... Alright, so the opponent's going to fire off a Poly, and I'm going to respond with Superfactorial. Now, I actually should have... What I should have done is actually flipped Superfactorial after the resolution of that last chain, and then I would have had the negation with Laplacian... I didn't even mean to rhyme there. I would have had that negation of before my opponent activated their next card, so... This technically was, like, slightly incorrect, but it's not enough that I'm really concerned about it. So I thought they were going to go for Albion, but then I realized they didn't use an Albaz, so they're going for a Despian Coratus. Yeah, they're going to try to bait me with the attack drop effect, but I'm not taking that bait now. Because here's the thing, right? I need this Laplacian negate because my opponent's about to summon a Fawn of Albaz off this Despian Coratus, and also I managed to hit the Branded Banishment out of their hand. This was an excellent hit. But really, they were going to end up discarding the last card anyway, because like I said, they're going to end up pulling a Fawn of Albaz out of the deck with the Despian Coratus. Well, boom, never mind. I thought they were going to, but they actually pulled out an Ad Libitum of Despia. That's right, I actually remember this game now, because it took forever to make this decision. I think they realized that I had purposely left the Laplacian with a negate up for when they did pull an Albaz out of the deck, and clearly they were intending to discard their last card in Edge of Chain here, so... yeah, just by sheer existence of this card on the field, really the Diameter lingering effect, we're able to force them to make a very suboptimal play. Now here they get the Vert Anaconda, and they will get the Search off the Edge of Chain. And I don't think they've activated Patchwork yet, right? Yeah, no, they haven't. So they do get this, which is like a little annoying, but I'm not really concerned about it. I've got a Subtraction and a Cynet Mining in hand, so like I've got moves, I've got plays. I've even also got the Nibiru token, which can potentially be a Link target. Not for much, but it can be if I really need it to be. Like, if I really need a Link too, I can potentially use it to make an IP Masquerena. Well, never mind, the opponent banished it, so... JK. Yeah, so I've got the Branded in Red to play through. Thankfully not the Mirror Jade, but I do have to play through Branded in Red. Unless I top deck Ghost Belle. OJ, I had a feeling that was going to happen. Thought I remembered that happening. This card is so good. I know I said it already in the deck profile. This card is so disgustingly good in this format. It really is. Like, in this deck especially, oh my god. Like, it's not only good for shutting down Branded in Red and Superfactorial, as I mentioned, but the main reason I have it in this deck is to act as called buys against called buys and DD Crows. I've actually seen quite a few people in Diamond teching DD Crow, probably because we're all, you know, running into a ton of Mathmechs right now. And it's funny, I've actually had, I had a game where I went to flip Superfactorial, and my opponent, you know, played DD Crow, and they scooped as soon as I Ghost Spelled the DD Crow, which, like, very much, validated that decision to include. I mean, I knew Ghost Spell was the right include anyway, but it's just so, it was so sweet. It was such a sweet feeling seeing my opponent concede after I Ghost Spelled their DD Crow. But speaking of conceding, our opponent's going to concede there as they realize, you know, the Accesscode Update Jammer OTK is inevitable at that point. So there's that game. We've got one more to take a look at. Let's jump straight into it. And for our final game, we're going to be playing against a blind second 8-axis deck. It's actually been a really long time since I've run into one of these, so to run into one again is cool. Especially here at Diamond 1. I like blind second 8 axis. If it didn't cost like 10 ultra rares to make, I would have definitely made it already by this point, but alas, you need a set of Bigfoots, a set of Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, and then just other stuff I don't really want to craft. Now, thankfully, we are once again rocking the Crossout Designator against our opponent's Ash Blossom. Excuse me, sorry about that. Oh wait, I think I clicked the same game. Yep, I did. JK. Cute. And for our final duel here, we're going to be taking a look at a game against blind second 8 axis. I haven't run into this deck in a long time now that I think about it. It's definitely been a minute, so it's cool to see them, especially again up here at Diamond 1, because I like this deck. I like blind second 8 axis. It's got a few too many ultra rares for me to want to actually craft the deck out myself. Like, I'd have to craft like Danger Bigfoots and a set of Kaiju Interrupted Slumber, but I think it's a cool deck. If I had all the stuff for it, I would definitely be inclined to try it out. Yeah, so the opponent threw out a Dimension Shifter here, which, you know, Dimension Shifter is a card we're going to have to play around quite a bit upcoming here. You know, as soon as people start teching against tier limits, whenever those drop, I would expect to see a lot more of Dimension Shifter in the format. So, you know, it's like, it's very annoying. Obviously, we can't set up our Superfactorial, but it's not an auto loss for Mathmech, as I'll show you here. Because of the hand that we opened, we're actually able to set up a Laplacian right away because we opened Circular plus the Extender there. We got a, what is it, Subtraction. So if you open Circular plus Extender, if you get Dimension Shifted, you know, I just went into the Laplacian straight away. I figured they've already used a card out of their hand, I can just snipe another one out. Which actually ends up being the Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, which is not too shabby. I'm going to set the Superfactorial anyway, just because I might be able to use it on my next turn. So, they do actually have another Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, but fortunately I have Ash Blossom, which fortunately you can still discard under Dimension Shifter. For those of you who are wondering why this is, Dimension Shifter says you can't banish, or that any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. Ash Blossom just says discard, so Ash Blossom doesn't care about going to the graveyard or banish. If you're wondering why Maxx doesn't work, if you read Maxx does not say discard. It says send this card from the hand to the graveyard, which you can't do while Dimension Shifter is you know, active. Thus, you can't use Maxx. So, if anyone is ever wondering that, that's why that is there. So, now when I saw my opponent drop 2 level 8 monsters here, I was really anxious. I was like, okay, they're just gonna OTK me, right? Because they just make the number 100, but they actually didn't. They made Linguriboh instead. So, I'm like, okay, we definitely take those. We definitely take not getting OTK'd here. So, I wonder if they did it because of the back row. I don't know. But in any case, they're going to try to use Pain Gainer to destroy Laplacian, but I'm just going to go ahead and use Laplacian's effect. At this point, they've gotten rid of the Superfactorial, so I don't really care anymore if my monsters actually get banished or not. And once again, I'm just going to use Laplacian's effect here to prevent it from being destroyed. Just save myself a little bit of damage. It's not going to be lethal either way, so... But there's like no reason not to, so... And I imagine they're getting a Zeus here. Yeah, but it's going to be a 3 material Zeus, so it only has 1 destruction that we have to play around. So as long as we can bait that out, we should be fine. Maxx is a bit of a whiff, but it actually doesn't really matter at all because we have the Cynet Mining anyway. So we have Circular plus an Extender. That should definitely be enough to OTK even through this Zeus board wipe here. Gonna of course start off by sending that Sigma and then specialing it back. Getting Circular's effect, I'll go ahead and grab the Mathmech Equation. Opponent still hasn't fired off Zeus yet, but that's alright. I'm just gonna go ahead and go for the Alembertain and then search for a Diameter because I actually haven't normal summoned yet. So. Now at this point, I'm like, okay, I gotta bait my opponent into using this Zeus at some point here. So I figure maybe one of the best ways I can potentially do that is to just start by going for the Splash Mage. And like maybe once I get the update jammer out, you know, I'm thinking maybe then they'll use the. Now really, what they should be doing here. Well, actually, you know, with Zeus, it's different. It's definitely different with Zeus because obviously, if they. Well, actually, no, it's not now I think about it. They can still wait for the resolution of Accesscode Summon, and if they have their toggle set to on, yeah, they'll still have a chance to Zeus before I, before I have a chance to actually pop the Zeus with the access code. So, yeah, no, I take back what I said. No, the opponent definitely should have waited until I actually summoned Accesscode Talker for them to board wipe a Zeus. Because now, like, I haven't even used the update jammer yet. Now, granted, I was thinking about this mid-game, and I was pretty sure I actually didn't have a way to get to update jammer access code, or even access code, period. I think I did kind of misplay there by bringing out Transcode as early as I did. Although at the same time, I didn't feel like there's really any other way for me to bait my opponent into using their Zeus destruction. So there's a bit of a catch-22 there, but my opponent actually conceded, like, as soon as I summoned this edition here. That was definitely an early concede, because actually looking at my extra deck and what I had left, I definitely could not update jammer access code OTK, and I really don't even think I could climb into access code anyway. Now, granted, I think I still had some amount of outs there, but my opponent would be a top deck mode, but still, I think it was an early concede for my opponent there. But, you know, of course, we will always take those anyway. We'll definitely not complain about that. So that is going to be all for those games there. If you have any suggestions for the build, for a side deck as well, definitely feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm very much open to those suggestions. And, yeah, let's just go ahead and move on now to the outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack. You'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation. You do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot, as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is XLex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.